Hey, this is Pete. Welcome to the show. In this episode, I'm talking with Sister Nancy Usselman. Sister Nancy is a daughter of St. Paul, also known as the Media Nuns. In this episode, I try some of my comedy on Sister Nancy. We discuss the spirituality of our modern media, turning to God instead of AI, the importance of silence, and how she may or may not have gotten me fired from my last job. In a good way. Sister Nancy is the director of Pauline Media Studies. She is a media literacy educator, film and TV reviewer, speaker, writer, and author of Media Fasting, 6 Weeks to Recharge in Christ, and A Sacred Look, Becoming Cultural Mystics. She has a doctorate in ministry from the Catholic University of America and is developing Media Mindfulness Catechesis, a model of faith integration with our everyday media use. You can learn more and follow Sister Nancy and the work of the Media Nuns at daughtersofstpaul.com. This is in part a comedy podcast.
Sure.
And so I'd love to play just like it's about probably 15, 20 second bit. Just to kind of, because I've found that this subject it can be very intense. And I feel like, for me, I've found in my own life that humor can really kind of diffuse a lot of that. Sometimes I like to call my mom from an unknown number, and as soon as she answers, I hang up. Does anyone else do that? Try and call your mom? You? No, never. I would never. And that's really to test her as my emergency contact. You can't be too careful.
That's great. Use technology as a means for laughter in comedy.
Yeah,
I think everybody can relate. So I'm Sister Nancy Usselman, a daughter of St. Paul. So we're known as the Media Nuns because our whole mission in the church is to evangelize in and through the media culture. And I'm director of our Pauline Media Studies, and it's a national organization based in Los Angeles, but we teach media literacy integrated with faith formation. We call it media mindfulness, a way of critically engaging with the popular media of our day and helping people to really think it through theologically their media experience. I'm also a writer, a speaker, a film and TV reviewer, and an author. So I end up on all different kinds of film panels around Hollywood, red carpet premieres, interview people. And I think it's really interesting as a daughter of St. Paul to be present there in the secular media experience because people are surprised when they see a nun, but usually pleasantly surprised, which is great. I have a doctorate in ministry from Catholic University of America, and my whole focus is to develop a media mindfulness catechetical model of faith integration with media use so that it can be used in every faith formation experience. So I'm working on that. I finished a dissertation. Now I'm turning it into new platforms. But I love studying AI. I've been kind of researching a lot of that and speaking about it. And just really helping people to think about their own media experience and to reflect upon it. How did you hear about us? Maybe it's my question.
Well, yeah. So that is a very good question. So actually, I was working at a Catholic parish, which I think I mentioned in the email. I was working as the communications coordinator over there.
Okay.
And one of my coworkers, we had been talking really for a while about doing a social media fast at the parish, right? And we ended up kind of I did like a rebranding project for the parish, and so it was really kind of focused. I think you watched the video, that I sent through.
Yeah, that's great.
And so we were really kind of like taking it in this direction of ministering to kind of this modern dilemma that I think people are in of, what do we do about sort of this immersive media, right? That's kind of all over. And so we had really kind of like pushed this thing through, and and we're talking about like a mission and a vision for it, and I created this branding, and it was all the way through. We had presented it to the staff, and we kind of got to that point where we felt like it was through. And then we went to the pastor to kind of have this conversation about, hey, maybe for Lent we could do a social media fast, and we could lead it and kind of, in some ways as an experiment of sorts to sort of see, what would that be like, and so in the conversation, my coworker had your book in
Oh,
his
really?
hand.
Wow.
Yeah. And so yeah, we and we get into the meeting and we're talking about it, and almost right away you can tell that the pastor is not on board with doing a social
Is
media.
that right? Wow.
And actually, it's yeah, it's very interesting we're talking because ultimately it led to like a forced resignation scenario for myself. And so in a way you got me fired, Sister
Oh my
Nancy.
God.
I,
Oh my
I
Lord.
didn't disclose that to you.
Oh,
No, I have worked through it, and I'm so grateful to them for the experience of, but it does bring up that issue of like, it is so sensitive, and I think it's so difficult to know kind of like what do we do with it, especially on an organizational level.
right.
And so I think, but in a way it was really kind of a blessing in disguise, and I think it helped me to kind of solidify like what I want to do as far as a personal mission, and so that really is kind of why we're talking. So
Yeah.
I thank you for
No problem.
that.
I'm happy to talk about this. I mean, I talked in all different parishes, young adult groups and stuff, about this topic. And I go around doing parish missions even about this. So it's surprising to me to hear a pastor who is unaware of the problems related to to social media, but all kinds of media. Just and now, even with the world of AI, it's going to be even more of an issue, to something that we must discuss. The church must be there to question it, to challenge it, to be the ethical voice. And if we don't do it, no one's going to. So, and
Yeah,
we want
I
to do it from the faith perspective, right? We have to do it from our Catholic faith perspective. There's a lot of media fasting going on in a secular world, but it's missing something, because yes, we can detox our brains, but we need to detox our souls too. And it's surprising to me that, many ministers in the church still do not understand this. But it's a growing reality and a need to not just see. I think sometimes, pardon me,
yeah, of course.
when people see the title of my book, Media Fasting, they kind of start chuckling and like laugh nervously, as if I'm saying do away with every bit of your media. And that's
Right,
not at all
right.
what it's about. And I think sometimes people misunderstand that. But really, it's about what is the one thing that's most problematic for you? Like the one thing that sucks your time, that
Yep.
one app or that one video game or what that one Netflix series, whatever it is, right? What's the one thing that causes you to be distracted from your other daily duties, right?
Yeah.
Um, sometimes we want to be a little distracted, okay, but distraction as a whole can be very, it really can lead to the death of creativity, is what I say.
Yeah.
I think it distracts us so much, and we're so fragmented in our thoughts that we lose that sense of creativity. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was a long answer to
No, no, that's a great place to start too, because yeah, I wanted to ask you just, what was kind of that inciting incident for you? I did read through the book before our
Oh,
conversation, and I didn't, take the full 6 weeks, which I would like to, but in the short time, I did feel like I got a sense of it, and I love it. I feel like it's a wonderful place to start with the reflections,
yeah.
daily reflections and the prayers. I've often thought about that too, of like what prayers should we go to for navigating this? Because I think that's so important to kind of keep ourselves on that path without getting
Exactly.
sort of pulled into these different directions. So I loved it. I felt like, oh, all these reflections, I've thought about all of those and some that I hadn't. So I do really appreciate the book, and I think it's a great place to start. And but yeah, I think you touched on it a little bit in the book, just of, you know, what was that moment or that series of moments that kind of caused you to look at it and be prompted to write the book?
Sure. Well, as daughters of St. Paul, our mission in the church is to communicate Christ in and through the media and within the media culture. And because that's our sole mission, and because we're so immersed in the technology, so immersed in the secular culture too, because as we're also media literacy educators, and so we teach people how to engage with popular media, but how to do so thoughtfully, how to bring our faith into conversation with it. So, as daughters of St. Paul, we already have like a style of life, and our religious life, and our prayer and life and spirituality are really centered on this, on how to live our faith within a media culture. And the Pauline spirituality, um, really founded by the founder of our congregation and 9 other institutes, comprising the Pauline family, Blessed James Alberione, his whole thing was to develop a spirituality for this media culture, and it's based on St. Paul the Apostle, the church's great evangelizer, the great communicator, the one who used the media of his day to communicate the gospel. And so this media spirituality that we have already makes us aware and deeply seeped into our relationship with Christ, so that when we use media, we're always doing it with this conscious sense, like this questioning sense. We're always thinking and questioning it. And what is it saying? Why is it saying that? And we're often praying over it, because we pray for media people, we pray for media professionals, we pray in reparation for the evil present in the media as well. It's part of our spirituality. So we're very much attuned to this. And so even as sisters, we've even been doing media fasting little bits here and there already for ourselves, because we can realize how immersive it is, how time consuming it is. But I give a lot of talks to all around the country, all different groups, but I also gave a talk to a group of college students at UCLA. And we had a really interesting conversation. I was talking to them about digital authenticity and what that looks like. And afterwards, a whole group of them came over to me afterwards, and we started chatting. And one girl said to me, "Oh, I did a media fast." And I said, "Oh, really? So how did it go?" And she goes, "Well, I did away with Instagram, but it didn't go so well." And I said, "Why? What happened?" She goes, "At the end of it, I went right back to my same old pattern." And
Yeah.
I said, "See, that's the problem. Like, we can't just say we're going to do away with it and hope it works, um, we need something that will ground us. And what grounds us is a deep spirituality, and to increase our relationship with Christ in the process to formulate a way of bringing Christ into our media experience. But also to consider what we're replacing that time with when we're not on our device or that app. So that makes a big difference. And so many people say, "Oh, well, I don't have time to pray." Well, maybe if you just did away with those Instagram reels for a little bit, you might just have 10 minutes there.
Yeah.
Maybe more like an hour, but
8 hours.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what started it off, because I said we were already doing that as sisters. It's kind of part of our way of living an examined life. But what we realized is that the more I speak to other people, and especially to young adults, I was like, we need this to be for everyone. Like, we need to be concrete about it, and how a Catholic media fast can really be transformative to people, but also how it just changes how we engage with our media from that point on.
Yeah. Yeah, did you get a lot of pushback from this idea? I mean, there wasn't any sort of forced resignation
No,
scenario
I
for
mean,
you?
no, all our sisters, well, see, our publishing house, they loved it. They were like, yeah, no, we need this.
I
So
mean,
they,
it makes so much sense. And especially for
and
you to kind of lead that, and to write that kind of guiding piece. Yeah.
right, right. And everybody I talk to, and especially young adults, when I talk to them, they are always like, oh, I need this. Like, I need this. I need this. They may not buy a book to read, but I think I need
Yeah.
this. Um, so that's why we created an online media fast challenge as well to go along with it. That kind of guy you know, compatible to the book. It kind of just goes along with it to receive a weekly email to guide people along their media fast. So even if they don't read the book, it gives them the theme for the week and a challenge and a media prayer so that it really helps them to reflect on it. But yeah, and creates a community because, we kind of need to do this with one another. We have to hold each other accountable. It's too difficult to do by yourself for the most part. It helps when you tell someone else, hey, if you see me going on, or if I'm playing, video game for like more than an hour, just kind of stop me.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
kind of need that. You just
Yeah.
need that guidance and support of someone else. But that's every time I talk to people about this, they're always like, yeah, we really need this. And it's funny, even an older crowd is saying to me, I need this for my kids. I need this for
Yeah.
my grandkids. And I'm like, go for it. Do what you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so is the thinking with it is it would be done kind of as a group or as an individual as well, but
It can be either individually or as a group. I mean, like I said, there was a group of young adults who told me that they did the media fast together using my book, and they did it as a group, and it really helped them to stick to it. So I think it's a great idea. The more we can create community, because really our faith is always about leading us not just between me and Jesus, but it has to be me, Jesus, and the ecclesial community, right? We're
right.
always drawing people into the life of the church, into the life of the sacraments. And so I think doing it together is a great idea.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Even as a whole parish, right? I know
We
so
tried.
many
We
people.
tried. It
I
was one
know.
of those things that was just um such a kind of drastic idea, like kind of an intense,
It's kind
sort
of
of
funny.
extreme idea.
It's kind of funny because it takes so long for the church to jump onto even new
Oh yeah.
technologies. And, I think without the pandemic, we still would be back, backwards 10, 15 years, more like 20 years.
Yeah.
But I think the pandemic kind of jump started most people in the church to realize these technologies have to be used. We need them as ways of living the faith and communicating the faith today. So I think it's ironic that now we're saying, oh, but what, we got to do away with it sometime. Wait a minute, we just got on the bandwagon. So I
Oh,
understand.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
But if we're really in touch with young adults and even children today, we're going to realize that here we are 20 years out of the developments of social media, and we're realizing the significant impacts it's having upon our health mentally, psychologically, but also spiritually. And if we don't just start addressing it, we're going to lose something of our soul. Like we're going to be losing something,
Yeah.
and especially with younger generations, they're really lost. They're lost in this. They're lost in the technologies, and I mean they're turning to chatbots, AI
Oh
chatbots
yeah.
for counsel and for how to live their life. And no, we
Yeah.
need to
Well,
help them right
I'm
before
glad
things.
I'm glad you're you're on board with that because I or not on board with it, yeah, recognizing the same thing because I right away I feel like there's an issue in that, and I think that is really the place where God should be, right? I mean, and I was just having a conversation before ours exactly about this. It's like, well, and speaking to someone who does engage with AI chatbots significantly, just saying like, well, have you tried God? Have you tried
Exactly.
going to God with your
Exactly.
questions and kind of sitting in that silence and
Because that's the problem. The silence.
yeah.
A chatbot's going to respond, whether it's true or not, or whatever the crazy things it says. But we don't know how to be in silence this day. And I
Yeah.
think because with the development, all these technologies, we're always on to some other screen. We're always listening. Even if when we have a chance to walk, we're putting earbuds and walking and listening to music or
Yeah.
listening to podcasts. And it's great to listen to podcasts. I'm not saying not listen to podcasts,
Yeah, don't
obviously.
not listen to that.
But,
No, I'm kidding.
but I'm
Just
just
Sister
saying
Nancy in mind, though.
that's right. But
No.
what I mean is that, but it has taken away from just the ability to sit in silence. I actually read a study that said most people would rather receive a mild electric shock than sit in a room alone for 15 minutes. No
Oh,
kidding.
what a great study.
I mean, we can't be silent. And that's a problem in a culture. And I think that's something to really question, and so in media fasting, it's not just to be, alone in silence, for 15 minutes, but that's definitely part of it. But it's also being questioning of everything we're doing. Basically, it's going to the spiritual practice of examination. How do I examine my online life? Yeah. We talk about other examining our actions and other. Do we examine how we engage with people online? Do we examine how I portray myself online? Do we examine, first of all, how much time I'm spending and what am I doing? And do I engage with people in face-to-face interactions too? So it helps us to really step back and reflect, something that an AI can't do. We
Yeah.
have to be aware. We have moral agency. We're able to, examine our good actions and our bad actions, and we're able to discern that. And that's so important and so much needed in our culture, in this digital culture, more than ever, I think.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And yeah, it often feels like we're trying to really kind of balance these two lives now that, it's like the virtual world and the real world. And I just feel the overwhelm even in my own life, but for really everybody. I think it's like you're constantly managing these two worlds now. And it's so yeah, it can be overwhelming. And I think it's I've I think for me I've struggled with that I guess the balance of figuring out how much I want to let in and I actually kind of I think tend towards the other direction of saying like I don't want any of it. I want to go to a dumb phone and I don't want to be constantly inundated with notifications and I don't want to be thinking about like,
Right,
is this gonna make a good Instagram post when I'm
right,
eating my lunch? Or like,
right,
and so I think for me it's this trying to figure out like what is that balance to strike? And I do think the media fasting really can kind of bring the clarity to say like, yeah, what in my life, am I sort of what can't I give up?
right,
Like
right,
what are the things that are I'm sort of too attached to
right,
and so I think it's such an amazing kind of way to and it's such a an ancient tradition right of
right,
fasting and it's kind of
right.
bringing giving it this sort of this modern dilemma that we're in and bringing kind of the old wisdom to that and I just think it's
Exactly.
brilliant and so yeah but I'd love to kind of ask you too of so for someone like me or someone listening who maybe is kind of struggling with I guess the balancing of it and I think also too the kind of the conflict of it as well of of, now there is some research out there, especially with social media. There isn't a ton on AI yet, but we know that there are sort of rotten fruits that it's yielding. And I've often asked myself the question of just, is it worth engaging with? Is it better to just kind of reject it? And because we know that there are kind of under the radar sort of, I guess, to go as far as like rewiring the brain's functions, is it something that we can even, I guess, responsibly engage with without kind of, yeah, I guess, kind of losing ourselves to
Right.
the subliminal effects of it, I guess.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think like in any media development, there's every bit of media, every form of media, legacy media included. I mean, there's good and bad in everything because it's human beings, right? And we can use it for good or for evil, right? And there is definitely that present. And that's why I say in our spirituality and even in the book, I bring out this idea of praying in reparation for that evil that's present there. I think that just kind of already gives us an opportunity to step back a little bit, to think about, to really be conscious about what I'm engaging with and why. But I think with these technologies, especially social media, and now with AI even more, it's social media is created by algorithms that are going to be addictive. They're purposely wanting to keep you present. That's how it was created. The Silicon Valley executives who created it will admit that that's how they developed it. And they even send their kids to schools without any tech.
Right.
Okay, so, they know what they did, but the world is hooked. Now what, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like an opportunity for us to like take back our own responsibility and take back our conscious use of these technologies instead of allowing ourselves to just be following the algorithms and allowing it to rewire our brain. It can, but we can also respond against that. So, but I don't think it's necessarily we do away with it completely. I think the church has always talked about every new means of communication, every technology is a gift of God. That comes from Vatican II with Inter Mirifica, the Decree on Social Communications, and every document of the church since then on technology and media and communications. And every Pope's message for World Communications Day, always recognizing these as gifts of God. And even Pope Leo now is talking about AI. It is an amazing gift. However,
Yeah.
how are we using it? And why are we using it? And what are we communicating through it? That's where it takes human intervention to question, is this supporting human dignity? Is it supporting my dignity? Am I becoming a better person because of the use of these technologies? And for those who are Catholic influencers or Catholic evangelists using these technologies, am I using this technology, which is created for branding, a personal brand? I mean, that's how it's created. It's very selfie focused,
Yeah.
right? I'm creating my own personal brand. Well, at what point is it more about me than about Jesus? So we have to constantly counteract the influence of those algorithms on us and that need to be recognized, that need to have a million followers and having, great influence on people's lives. No, that's temptation, right? And it does have that ability to make us want that more and more and more. It's created that way, but it doesn't mean we can't go against that. Still using the technology for good, still being an influencer, still being a creator, and still being an evangelizer, but always aware of that influence on us so that we can constantly be questioning and saying, well, first of all, what is the message I'm giving? Is it more about me or is it more about Jesus? So questioning that, but also just, even for entertainment purposes, why am I watching this? Why am I engaging with it? What do I take away from it? Is it, um, is it supportive of my Catholic values and virtues or not? So we have to be more participative. I think in a media that's already participative, but even more so. I think to be faithful witnesses and to be faithful disciples within this digital culture. I think it calls us to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you give me a lot of hope actually in the book, but also in the way you talk about it, because it's very easy to kind of be sort of extreme in either direction. And um yeah, and I think it's as you were talking and you mentioned temptation, and that I in some ways it's the ultimate way of testing our self-discipline.
In some
It's
ways,
kind of
yeah.
like the ultimate sort of can represent the ultimate temptation. I think
Mhm.
just, it's not like isolated to one thing. It really
Right,
kind of represents a whole world of
right,
possibility in that regard. And so in a way, it's an incredible spiritual practice to be able
right.
to engage
Well,
with it, but not get taken by it, but
right,
also, recognize that so many people are on it, and
right.
yeah, and
I
also
mean,
bringing the Catholic faith to it, because I think for me, that was one of the things that we came across when I was working at the parish, was that we read through the Vatican document called "Towards Full
towards full
Presence."
presence,
Yep.
yes.
And there was mention of, and I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but there was mention of basically the idea that because we have the sacraments and we believe in a sacramental worldview, that the sacraments can never be received virtually.
That's
And I
right.
and I think for me that's such a vote of confidence in the church, is that
Right.
they got that right, and
Yes.
it's like even this, we can only go so far as Catholics. We can't receive the Eucharist over by virtual means. And I mean, we can watch a mass,
Right.
live streamed,
Right.
but it still is that connection
Right.
to the sacramental world that I think the church is just. I have so much faith in that. Um,
Right.
uh,
We're an embodied faith.
yeah,
The Catholic faith is an embodied religion. Like it's bringing people together as a community. It is not about separation. And this reason is because the Eucharist is what brings us together. We are together receiving the body and blood of Christ. And it's not just me and Jesus, I'm getting, receiving communion, but it's called communion because we're coming up together as a whole body of Christ to receive that body, to be witnesses in the world. So we're going up into communion. We enter a church. We kind of leave the digital world aside, as we enter the church. But then at the end of Mass, we're sent forth to go and communicate the gospel with your life. So we're sent back into the digital spaces to humanize them, to bring back that sense of community and communion within those digital environments. And that's so important. That's such a Catholic thing.
yeah,
That's why I think we have so much to say about this, and the church has so much to say about this, these technologies, about being really human in these technologies that are often dehumanize people. I mean, think about we're the loneliest culture ever. People in the world, in all of history, we're the loneliest human beings. Well, it's because it's kind of separating us from one another. But we have to bring people together. And so, whatever ways we can find that in the church to be a sense of communion and bring people together. I think it's possible digitally, which it does happen with, groups and organizations and people coming together, sharing same values, but it has to lead it not only there, but also to the in-person real world. Like we can't just be in the digital world, but we also need to come together face to face. The church is always about balance.
Yeah.
It's spirituality. And I think to really be steeped in a relationship with Christ and in the church's spirituality and the church's sacramental life is what's going to save us in this digital culture and now in the world of AI. That's what holds us. That's what grounds us, like nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, just kind of piggybacking off of that, especially with AI, in talking with a handful of people about it, it can feel like if you don't have that grounding of a belief in God and you're kind of being pulled by, I've been calling it pop culture morality or like pop morality. There isn't this sort of higher morality that you're following. I think it's so easy to kind of go in that direction of saying, well, I'm going to talk to the AI chatbot and ask, my questions instead of God. And it really feels like, well, but that's the progressive thing to do. That's the thing everybody is doing. But I find that the church really offers that grounding in the lineage of tradition that we have, it's not the first time we faced something. And so I think that gives me so much hope. And I actually think people are starting to recognize that and have been recognizing that and are really kind of coming to the church for that. And I will say this, especially with AI, though, it does feel unprecedented. It feels sort of like I've been asking myself, like, well, what would Jesus say about this? What would the church fathers say about this, and the saints, and I think there's definitely scriptural reference that we can pull from, and
well, the church does, and this guy, Blessed James Alberione. He died in 1971, but he was named by Pope John Paul II as the media apostle and the apostle of the new evangelization. And the reason is because he saw the ability of the church long before anybody did. He founded us in 1915. And 1915, there was only the press. But if you think people in the church do not get the use of technology and media to communicate the gospel, figure out in 1915, he had a lot of opposition. He wanted to print the Bible and get it in every home, and they were like, "Why?" But just to say it, he took on every means as it came on. He took on radio. He took on film and television. He was one of the first biblical filmmakers in Italy in the 1930s. Like nobody was doing this, and he was using it to communicate the gospel. And I would say, well, the church is right on it, because even with AI, the church is being the ethical voice and being the voice of Christian anthropology to people directly, to the tech executives and developers of AI, saying, you need to think about these things, like you need to be aware. And they're signing on to these, agreements with the Vatican to say, we're going to be thinking about this in relation to all of humanity and the good of humanity. And that's phenomenal. The church needs to be there and needs to say this. And I think in one way, being one of the largest religious groups in the world, the church has a moral voice, and that's our responsibility. But the great thing is that it's also being used, just like Alberione would say, use every means possible to communicate the gospel, use every new technology that comes forward. Well, there's a lot of Catholic groups that are rising up who are creating Catholic LLM. They're creating platforms.
So that's large language models
large language models. So they're creating Catholic, that it will be a source of Catholic response for people. So, these great, Matthew Sanders, I don't know if you know him from Longbeard, they're creating like this platform, Magisterium AI, which is pulling on all the church's documents. And the great thing about these, these platforms that they're creating, they show the sources. They give you a footnote exactly where in what document and where in that document it's found, where the AI kind of created and generated
Mhm.
this response. And I think that's phenomenal. And, even though Perplexity is kind of doing that now too, but it's not so great. But, it's the church can be there. The Catholics must use these technologies right from the start, but use it for good and show that it can be used for good, can be used for evangelization. And there's a lot of groups out there that are starting AI platforms, and I think it's great. They need that. They need people in the church, like the church, educators and theologians, to constantly remind them, hey, ask this question, like, is this really supporting human dignity or not? What are you doing this? How are people going to respond to this? Does it support people's spiritual life, or is it going to harm them? So, like, we have to be that voice, even to those who are creating it. Um, so that's what I do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that there's these LLMs and large language models. Is I'm learning the acronyms as I go here, um but yeah, actually one of my friends showed me I don't know if he made it because he is a computer programmer. Um but it was basically like one of those like a search for within the Catholic catechism. So he'd
Okay.
like sort of ask like, well, what does this say
Yeah.
about it? And for me, I actually just ask my wife when I have any questions about the catechism because she's a convert, so she knows her stuff. I
Yeah.
was cradle Catholic and grew up with it. So
Sure.
but yeah, I think you're again, it gives me such hope that there is kind of a silver lining with all this and kind of a light in it. And I really feel like that is, yeah, that's sort of the like ministering to where people are at, in it.
Exactly.
But again, it's like I really struggle with that sort of balancing and AI especially kind of freaks me out in terms of,
Mhm.
like even just engaging with it, is it somehow influencing you without you knowing it and kind of
Yeah.
I guess
Like,
like a
is it
trickery to
challenging? Are you not thinking as a result? Like, is it just doing the work for you? And we're not using their
yeah
God-given intellect to reason and examine and think and really use our intellect. And that is a big question. That is a
yeah
question in the church, to say, let's think about this. Why are we using this? You
yeah
know, can it help you craft some talk or craft some, article or whatever? Yes, you can get ideas or information, but is it doing the work for you? That'll
yeah
be the question.
well, and that's what I feel like there are certain things we should just like almost never ask of AI. And I do feel that prayer, but also I think creativity and really sort of like especially like the writing process.
Yeah.
If it feels like the seed of the idea is coming from the AI, I think that becomes an issue,
Yeah.
in that it didn't originate with the person, and it kind
Yeah.
of and yeah, there's a book I'm reading. I'm not too far into it, but it was referenced in another book. I don't know if you're familiar with Nicholas Carr, but he wrote
Yeah.
a book called The Shallows, and then he just
Yes.
put another book out called Superbloom.
Yes.
And in The Shallows, he references this author named Leo Marx, who
Mm.
wrote a book called The Machine in the Garden.
Oh, I do.
And one of the pieces, and again, I'm not going to quote it perfectly here, but one of the things he mentions is there is a threshold that humanity can cross, basically with these emerging technologies. And he was prior to AI when he wrote this,
Sure.
but he said if humanity basically offloads tasks that require wisdom to
Mhm.
technologies, then we may cross a threshold that we can't kind of come back from.
Mm.
And that really stuck with me, that piece of tasks that require wisdom. And
Mhm.
I really feel that the creative process and writing specifically, it is a task that requires wisdom. And I think it is at least to ask ourselves that question of,
Right.
is this something that I shouldn't essentially become dependent on this technology
Right.
for? And 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 so uh yeah, I think that's kind of the question we're asking ourselves
Yeah.
right now. And again, thank God we have the church
Mhm.
to guide us in that way. But I just feel for a lot of the people who don't sort of have that grounding of, well, I guess why not then?
Right.
Why don't
Right.
I kind of just take that step? And so maybe my question then is, you know, like what is that threshold? I mean, we talked about the
Mhm.
sacraments and the sacramental world, that they'll never really they can't be received virtually, but I guess like for you, but also the media nuns, have you talked about, what is that threshold with technology that we can't really like kind of cross, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I have a threshold exactly articulated, but I mean, I know the church and its documents are coming out about this. And it really has to be about responsibility. Like we have to take human responsibility for everything that's created. So even any AI technology, someone needs to take responsibility for what the machine does, right?
Right.
And it can't discriminate against people. It can't create any biases, you know. So the church is saying these things like um, even issues of security and privacy and reliability and transparency. I mean, these are all things the church has said that these technologies must be, we must be aware of, the creators must be aware of that, and say that it cannot take the place of a human being. Human beings, and we know as people of faith, we're created body and soul. And that, that's what makes us created, that spiritual aspect to us is what makes us created in God's image and likeness, right? And that can't be replicated by a machine. And that's where I said, like, where we have this ability for self-awareness, the ability for self-reflection and moral agency, that can't be replicated by any machine. And so when we try to do that, when we start trying to play God
Hmm.
and have a machine thinking a machine can do that, or can take over, even in the area of super intelligence, which they're looking towards, but
Hmm.
um, can it be beyond a human being? No, because we're unique creatures made in God's image likeness, unlike any other creature on earth, and unlike anything else created. And so the church is always bringing forward that understanding of the human person. So I don't know what the threshold is, except that if it starts to, disrespect human beings, and we have a lot in our world and in the technological world that has already crossed the threshold in the sense of, trying to clone creatures, and China cloned a baby yak that was born and is all cloned creatures. So like, are we crossing the threshold of bioengineering? Yeah, I think we're crossing that threshold already in so many ways. So the church is always bringing forth that ethical understanding. Are we messing with God's creation?
Yeah.
That's the threshold. Are we messing with it? Um, so I don't know. It's a challenge for me. What we teach on, we integrate media literacy with faith formation, and so we call it media mindfulness. And it basically, media mindfulness is about asking questions, being critical thinkers of every media experience that we have, of everything we are doing in our media world. If we don't stop and reflect and think theologically even about it, like whether this is something I should do or not, because of my faith values, we're going to end up in that area of where it could be a threshold. So I really do believe that we just have to help people keep being mindful of that media experience and constantly ask questions. Never take anything for face value. Have to examine it. Everything from AI, you have to question. It's like it's hallucinating all the time. It gives you terrible answers, and it's all wrong and it's false. So you have to. Yes, it's getting better and better, but you have to question it. We have to examine it, and we have to bring our faith into questioning it and examining everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you read the book Superbloom?
I didn't read Superbloom. I know of it, but
Okay.
yeah, I have Shallows. I did read part Shallows.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
have I have like a whole library of books on social
Yeah.
media, the
Yeah.
problems of it, the Catholic perspective, the evangelization of it. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
I think I have it. I just finished a dissertation on this. That's why I have a lot of books.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, it's great because I feel like I'm just sort of scratching the surface with all of it. So yeah, I mean, I was just eating this book up, the fasting book. I was eating
Yeah.
eating it up, Um, but yeah, I just feel like there's so much to this that initially I was like, am I sort of focusing on too small of a subject? But it's expansive, and
Yes,
I
it is.
feel that. Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about it, but yeah, in the book Super Bloom, and the reason I bring it up is because it's such a recent book that he does touch on AI and some of the kind of I guess, his thoughts about it, but also, and he's pretty objective, Nicholas Carr, I've
Mhm.
found, and I like the way he kind of approaches
Mhm.
things, um, but there's a section on AI and kind of like what almost asking the question of sort of like what is the spirit behind AI and kind of and
Mhm.
behind some of these technologies, like is it truly sort of this neutral thing that it's sort of like what you put in you get out, or is there something more to it, like a kind of a spiritual element to it that maybe isn't so obvious. And he kind of gives like a few examples, but he brings up I think it was in 1844 there was a demonstration of essentially like the telegraph.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he and I'll put reference to this in the show notes for anyone
Mhm.
who's listening, but he basically brings up this demonstration of the telegraph, and he talks about how it led to the spiritualism movement. And I don't know if you've heard of
Mhm.
this or kind of
Mhm.
come across this before, but he kind of goes through this process of like, okay, so if we're using these large language models and
Mhm.
we're essentially like pulling information from the past, people who are no longer alive,
Mhm.
um, and we're essentially like now creating this thing that's communicating using the information from the past and then now communicating to us.
Right.
Isn't that a form of spiritualism in the sense that you're communicating with the dead, right? And that's my understanding of at least like part of that spiritualism movement. And if this is like too kind of too much of a strange territory for you, feel free to say what you need to. But I think as a spiritual person, I'm asking myself that question all the time of like, what is this and what's the spirit behind it? Is it good? Is it from God? Is it
Mhm.
something I should be engaging with or listening to?
Mhm.
And yeah, and I felt like in that book in Super Bloom, he doesn't really give like a solid opinion on it necessarily, but I do think it's worth that question of like, are we communicating with something we shouldn't be communicating with, or at least like possibly doing that?
Well, I think the devil, the evil one, can use anything to to try to get at us, right? And I mean, I know a professor who was one of my professors at Catholic University of America, he's an exorcist, and he says that in an exorcism, the devil would be texting them on their phones, these messages. And so the devil can use these technologies, they can use these means, but also grace is also at work within these things as well. People can come closer to God as a result of these technologies. So think about even, through social media, there's been this, since the pandemic, this like boom in Catholic content online, to the point where there was a Protestant minister who was bemoaning the fact that a lot of his people are watching Catholic content online. And he was like, why? Where are the Protestants? How come we're not on there? Like, what's going on? This is not good. There's too much Catholic stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, good. Yay. This is great. For probably the first time in all of history of the Catholic Church, we've been, like on there too much. That hasn't really happened. But, I think also with the issues with the AI, I think it's like we need to be aware of what the problems are, how, it can be misused, how it can be manipulative, where we can turn to it. So, I mean, I've been studying and realizing and seeing that people are going to AI and calling in it, and they're awakening their machine, they're awakening their AI as if it's like a spiritual being, and are turning to it as if it's God. It just made me realize, like, well, this is like the ancients who, worship the sun. Well, now we're worshiping AI.
Yeah.
I think like anything, people who are grasping for some spiritual connection and don't have faith in God, then they're going to be turning to these technologies as if they are God, but they're not God. They're not God. But people are turning to it in that way, and saying that they're receiving this spiritual connection, and it's bizarre, but yet at the same time it's sad, because that means the church, we need to do more evangelization to help people to recognize, no, this is not going to fulfill your deepest desires and yearnings and your answers to all your questions. Only God can do that. Only in Christ do we have all our needs fulfilled. So, but the church can't be outside of the culture, the digital culture, and communicate that. It needs to be in it from within, and help to transform that culture from within it, so as to help people who are there within it to discover Christ. So, like anything, it can be used for good or for evil. We have a choice. And so, I think there is choices that can be done for good, can be used for good, and we just have to be aware of that. I think it's just calling us to be much more attentive to our experience and our digital lives than maybe we ever were before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a practice trying to manage it, because it really is. I mean, it's a supercomputer. I mean, the smartphone is a supercomputer, and it used to take up an entire room, and now it fits into our pockets. And it's just sort of, so it's like, can we be responsible with a supercomputer that's easily accessible to us?
Exactly.
And a lot of times, no. But again, I think it is that sort of invitation to that practice of, how can we really find, I think, discernment, becoming good at discerning, and also the, self-discipline.
And praying through our media experience, because if we don't bring it to prayer, then we're divorcing our spiritual life from our everyday entertainment or media lives.
Yeah, right.
We can't divorce it. We have to integrate it. That's what living faith really is about. It's integrating our faith within everyday experience. Well, our everyday lives is a digital life. If we don't integrate it within that, that means by praying through our experience. That means praying as we're gaming, or praying as we're watching a film, or praying for the person who posted that on social media that I disagree with, or or whatever it is, or praying for the creators of AI. Pray for those technicians that they make ethical choices. We got to pray for them.
Yeah.
So I think that makes all the difference. I think that makes
Yeah.
all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I do think that's something that's really helpful is to yeah, to bring prayer to it, which I haven't seen a ton of that, but because it often can
My
feel
book
like
has
it's
lots
like,
of
well, it's
prayers.
on what's that?
My book has lots
Oh,
of
I know.
community prayers, even in
Yeah.
the back. How
I
you can pray through your media experience.
yeah. And I loved the aspect of reparation as well,
Mhm.
praying for
Yeah.
reparation around media. And I couldn't help but notice that some of it I wondered if you had been influenced by I guess like the 12 steps, 12 traditions, which really I think was influenced by the church
It
originally.
is.
but
Yeah.
but I wondered if have you had like any kind of like any connection to the 12 steps or pulled on because it it's there's the fourth step of taking inventory, and then the fifth
Right.
step really is the reparations, right? Of
Right.
going to the people who have been
Right.
harmed if it's appropriate,
Right.
and trying to
I
heal
didn't
that, right?
use, I mean, I don't use 12 steps or anything and related to it purposely, but like I said, 12 steps was based on Catholic tradition. It was a
Yeah,
Catholic
yeah,
priest who started that for
yeah,
AA.
yeah,
So I think it's drawing from the Catholic tradition and Catholic spiritual traditions, which we have 2,000 years of spiritual traditions. So we're really drawing from all those spiritual practices. All of that comes from the history of the church. It's nothing new.
yeah.
It's all there, from the different spiritualities, different prayer experiences, prayer practices. All of that comes from the tried and true spiritual tradition. And I think it just has to become more holistic. Like,
Mm.
yes, we can go and pray a rosary, and that's really important. And I pray the rosary every single day. But also doing that by bringing our mind, even in praying the rosary, though, we have to bring our mind into it by reflecting and meditating. We bring our will into it by deciding what are we going, how are we going to live? What choices are we going to make? How are we going to choose to be more like Christ? And then our heart and our actions. What does that look like in our everydays? Does this prayer experience change me in my everyday life? Like,
Hmm.
am I just doing it rote and like I never question my attitudes or how I'm treating that person or whatever? If we're talking about true prayer and true spiritual practices, it has to transform us. They have to change us. If we're truly encountering Christ in that prayer experiences, it changes us. I have another book out called, The Challenge to Become, it's called The Sacred Look, Becoming Cultural Mystics,
Hmm.
because we have to have this mystical sense, this mystical lens as we look upon a culture, upon the popular media culture, not with disdain, yes, recognizing the evil, but recognizing the good as well, and recognizing that God's grace is at work in everything, in everything.
Hmm.
And how can we see with a mystical lens? How can we notice those moments within the popular media culture that are really drawing on human yearnings and desires and hungers and for purpose and meaning in life, for communion, connection, intimacy, whatever, like those deep existential desires. And to be able to notice those within the popular media culture and to draw it out because it can become a starting point for somebody who doesn't have faith. It can be the point of dialogue for someone who doesn't believe or who has fallen away from their faith. I mean, you could talk about the TV series The Bear with somebody who doesn't believe, but it can bring them into an awareness of the sacramental world because talk about a sacramental worldview, it's very present there. But just to say, in all these different media experiences, they can be our moment of engagement with someone who maybe is on the edge or who has no faith at all. And we have to, but to be that cultural mystic requires a deep sense of the spiritual life. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna get your book. After I only had time to read the one, but um, but
But that's
yeah,
all another topic, so we can talk about that
wonderful.
another time.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'd love to have you on again, but yeah, I think one of the things that really kind of brought me to really look at this in my own life was and this is a little maybe a little bit of a shift in topic here, but given that, this digitalization, this kind of or this transitioning of, real things from over here into the virtual world, I had say like a pen and paper on my desk before, and now I've got a notes app right in my phone. Um, this process of moving things over. And it isn't just a notes app. It's becoming bigger and bigger things, right? And it's even with AI, it could even be a relationship with, a chatbot, and I found and this is probably after, in the last 5 years or so, I started to recognize what that essentially like digitalization, the moving of real things into the virtual world was doing to me. It felt like it was taking the things of meaning, in the real world, that I can actually, it's a pencil and
Right.
it's like, I've experienced a pencil through my life. There's like a meaning to it, right? And there's paper
Mhm.
and then in the virtual world, I oftentimes feel like it can, like on its own, it can lack meaning. And I'm not talking about, talking to friends,
Right.
via, I mean, even us, right? It's like,
Right.
but it requires that human connection to it.
Right.
And I just found in my own life, I felt like I was moving all of these things into the digital space, and it was really making me feel a sense of meaninglessness, like
Mhm.
a nihilism.
Mhm.
And I really attributed a lot of it to that process of kind of moving things from the world
Mhm.
of meaning into the world of possibly meaninglessness. And I wonder, again, it's like that's a major reason why I've gotten into doing some of this. And I really feel like your book is an incredible kind of starting place for because sometimes it feels like we can get to like a really bad place and then be like, oh, I'm in a bad place instead of being like being aware of it kind of along the way. And I just felt like, wow, I got to a really bad place and I don't necessarily know how. And it
Yeah.
felt like, but I started to kind of dial things back, and I started this process of really kind of moving things back from the virtual world
Yeah.
into the real world. And really honestly, one of the major things was for me having kids was, it's kind of like you can't be in the virtual world. I mean, you can be, but it's like you're constantly being invited really to
Right.
sort of
Right.
re-engage with the
Right.
world of meaning
Right.
and the real world that but anyway, I wondered if you had any kind of thoughts for people who maybe are struggling with that, or even if your sense of like, are we creating this other kind of reality that's
Mhm.
possibly void of meaning?
Well, I mean, I think being, tangible, concrete, material beings ourselves, we're in this created world, and that God created. We're made body and soul, so we have this sense of the tangible and the concrete, and that really kind of comes out of that sacramental worldview, right? Because of the God speaks to us in the concrete, in the created world, in everything. Um, and can God speak through technology? Of course he can, but do we lose a sense of our createdness, of our concrete creativeness in the digital world? That's an interesting philosophical question. I think philosophers will need to address because
Yeah, get on it. Get on it, philosophers.
I think it is like something to say is that it doesn't mean we can't go there, but will it fulfill us completely? So, and in all my, is going around and talking to people and even studying and reading that there is this movement of people to going back to the tangible, concrete, created world, kind of like you said, using a pencil or, stepping on the grass and realizing
or
that's
just walking.
Right. That's a healthy thing to do. Like, there's this certain elements in the earth that are renewing physically our bodies that if we only remain in this virtual world, we will lose that connection and we will lose even our sense of well-being, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So I think it's a deeply philosophical question that we need to talk about. But I think there is something to that. And I think there is something that we could be losing a bit of our humanity if that's where we live all the time. We are losing our sense of who we are because we are not digital beings. We are tangible, material, and spiritual beings. So we can't forget that aspect of our lives. So I think it might be moving there. I sense it more and more that people are returning. I mean, you go to bookstores, people said, oh, when the digital world is starting, books were going to go out of existence. Guess what? People still buy books, They like the tangible book, right?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Yeah, so
I gotta get it signed, but
but I mean, it's not to say the digital world's not good. It's just there's a lot of great things about it, but I think we are, like I said, physical beings, and we like the physical as well. And if we're going to be true to our nature, we can't leave that aside. So that's my little tidbit.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Thank you for speaking to that. I know I'm kind of presenting some different philosophical ideas that, but yeah, I feel like you're bringing up for me this, like it really represents an opportunity though. Like if it's sort of like for me, this kind of breaking point was the moment that I really returned then to the sacramental world and I think in some ways to the church, that aspect of the church. And so I do think it represents that opportunity for people that it's like, well, hopefully you don't go there, but like there's kind of like a digital rock bottom that we can hit, where we're sort of like, I can't do this anymore, And honestly, like when I made that shift, I felt like that's when my life really kind of opened up, and I met my wife, and we have kids now, and we've traveled the world together, and I'm starting in on a personal ministry here, and so it feels like, again, there's that you mentioned in the book, but this kind of blessing and the curse, right? And that God's in it all. And and I actually feel that there's this really interesting opportunity with it in terms of people who would consider themselves atheist as well. That I think it represents almost a challenge to that way of thinking that, and in some ways I think this direction of meaninglessness in some ways can lead to that. I think this sense of almost like life is void of meaning or the author of meaning. But again, it's like if you're kind of brought to that place, I think it can really sort of challenge that question of, the author of meaning being God, and that my life does have meaning, and that I can return to it really at any moment. And so it's been this interesting kind of like I kind of think again that the church has been all over it throughout history, but I really feel like it's like, oh yeah, okay, the sacramental world, it's like returning to the sacramental world, and that's part of I feel like the ministry I've set out on is helping people to kind of reconnect to the meaning in their often neglected real lives in the real world, right? And that it's
Well,
there for you. It's always there for you to engage with. And
right. Well, you think about when you think of, say, the sacramental worldview, think about Jesus, wanted to come to us and remain with us physically
right,
by giving us his body and blood, right? He didn't just give us an idea. Oh, I'm going to be with you. That's it. Just
right,
remember that. He gave itself tangibly, concretely, physically to us in the Eucharist. That can't be duplicated by any digital
right.
means, right?
Yeah,
So I think we got to keep realizing the church is grounded, is grounded in this church, in this world. It's in this tangible experience. So we're always drawing people maybe from that digital experience into the tangible. So I think that's just an important part of evangelization. We got to always remember to bring people to the church, to the faith, to the sacraments. But there's so much we could talk about. But
there really is. Yeah. And thank you again, Sister Nancy, so much for the conversation. It's again, you give me such hope, and I feel like your book, Media Fasting, is such a wonderful way to kind of begin that process to bring some clarity around the media. Hey, it's Pete here. If you're considering joining the Dumbphone Club with me, consider the Wise Phone 2 from Techless and enjoy $25 off with code DumbphonePete at checkout. Broadcasting from the hill country of Austin, Texas, the Dumbphone Pete podcast is a production of Symbol and Story and is available to stream on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to check out our website, dumbphonepete.com, for new episodes, upcoming live shows, speaking events, personal and group coaching packages, and our helpful resources page. If you're able to support us with your dollars, visit our Give page to make a secure donation to the project. We sincerely appreciate all your support. And as always, don't be stupid. Stay dumb, people.